Good morning, students. Welcome to Modern India, POL 3842, and some of you are taking at AAS and history. Well, this course is a fascinating course. Why? I'll tell you why. And this course is asynchronous. That means I will be putting this video links from YouTube. I will record these lectures, put it on YouTube, put it to you through Blackboard. You will watch these lectures and answer 3 questions. So each question has to be answered about 1 paragraph each. So 3 paragraphs, okay? And every week there will be a lecture video going up, okay? And you will be watching it and answering it throughout the 14 weeks of the class. And also there will be, so there are 2 sessions every week, right? In a regular meeting classes. So there will be a lecture and there will be a documentary or movie which will teach you and enrich your knowledge about India throughout the semester. So you will be also watching that and writing 3 paragraphs. So this is a lot of writing. 6 paragraphs a week is not too much, but you have to focus and follow because that's 40% of your grade. And the final exam will be based on all these lectures, documentaries, and videos you watch, which is about 30%. And another 30% is your final paper you write for this class on any particular topic that interests you in this syllabus, okay? Okay, so what are we going to see throughout this semester? I think I'm clear with these 3 aspects of the 100% of your final grade, right? 40 for your weekly assignments, 30 for your final exam, 30 for your final paper. This final paper and final exam you will submit on the day of the final exam. That will be at the end of the semester. So just follow the assignments, you're good to go. Now, Modern India class. You will starting next week. I will be starting with the lecture on India's ancient civilization. Indus Valley Civilization. Sounds familiar? India name came from it. Indus Valley Civilization. Over more than 4,000 years ago. Okay? And where did these people come from? What did they do? And how did they live? All these things we will see in the class. And then there was an Aryan invasion, which brought along with them the Hinduism and the Vedic texts, which becomes the fundamental aspects of Hinduism, right? Every religion has texts. Bible for Christianity, Quran for Islam, right? Torah for Judaism. Hinduism has these texts, Vedic texts, and these teach us about the lords, gods. So after I teach you about the ancient civilization, I will be 1 week focusing on Hinduism. It's a fascinating religion, and it'll open up a lot of things which you wouldn't have heard of, because I was born and raised as a Hindu, and even personally I didn't know certain things until I became a scholar to study this area. And so you would learn a lot. And why is this important to study about Hinduism? It's one of the top 3 biggest religions in the world, okay? And it's the largest religion in India. And so what this religion entails, you will understand. And the next aspect of religious teachings, I will be teaching about Islam, because Islam is the single largest minority group in India. And the population of India's Muslims is about equal to that of Pakistan. And it is the 2nd largest Muslim populated country in the world, even though they are minorities in India, right? Indonesia will be considered the first Muslim populated, number 1 in terms of people. So you will learn about Islam, how Islam came to India. As you might know, Islam started in Saudi Arabia. And how did it come from Saudi Arabia to India? There are 2 paths. One was through a peaceful way, through trade and means in the southern part of India. Islam came peacefully. And another path was through invasion, through war and violence. It spread from the north. We will talk about that in those classes. And once we learn this ancient civilization and these religions, Then I will go and talk about two important kings of ancient India who has their impacts in modern India. That's why we need to learn them. It's not just some boring story. Every story I will be telling you in this class will be fascinating for me, and I will share that enthusiasm with you, and so that you could understand and grasp it, the relevance to the shaping of modern India. So some of these kings, two of them, Chandragupta Maurya, okay, and also Ashoka, and their impacts in modern India, and the idea of secularism and all those is fascinating. And once we talk about those two kings and the man behind those kings' success or emperor's success, Kaushalya, and how he is a mastermind. Like in movies, there's always a mastermind. This guy is a genius who wrote a book called Arthasastra. It's the oldest text on statecraft, how to conduct the business of the state, of government, how to run a country. And so these two emperors benefited from it, and even modern scholars benefit from the wisdom of that book called Arthasastra. And this was written by a Brahmin named Kaushalya. Okay, don't worry about spelling and other things. I will be using a board to write it down throughout the semester when I'm doing the lectures, so you will follow it. Now, this is just an introduction. Once we discuss that India's history is spotty for about 700 years, 1,000 years, you could say, after Christ, right? Then Christianity also spread to India. India has a minority population of Christians. So how did it spread? We will talk about that. And so after that, about 1,000 years, there's a spotty history. So then we will talk about India's influence, India influenced by Islam, especially Persian influence. So how the Turco-Mongol, if you're not able to follow the story so fast, this is just an introduction. I will break it down in each lecture. Do not worry about the depth of understanding. The depth and stories will come later. This is just so you have an understanding of what this course entails and whether this would interest you or you want to drop out and run. And either one of the choices you could make based on this. Turco-Mongol invasion happened to India, and so the invasion of India brought with it the Persian culture. So these people who came into India, at the time India was filled with Hindu kings. And so then Islam came through invasion from the north. And with them, they brought the Persian culture with them. And they call Persianate age from 1,000, that is 1,000 years before now, right? From 1,000 to 750. Okay, 1750, I'm sorry, 1750. So it's about 750 years of Persian influence in two important empires. And the one is called Delhi Sultanate. Delhi Sultanate is the first one. And the Delhi Sultanate is started with the slave dynasties. And what do you mean slaves? Talk about why they were slaves and how the slaves get to rule. And then after that, Mughal Empire. It's for another couple of hundred years. Mughal Empire is a very influential and colorful time in India. And you probably heard of Taj Mahal in India. One of the wonders of the world was built during Mughal Empire in India by an emperor named Shah Jahan. So we will talk about 6 influential emperors in Mughal Empire and how they built India and their influence and impacts in India. Stories. This will be filled with stories that will make you learn easily, not just theoretical ideas of their religious practices and the war and the alliances they made, but it is also to understand the story format so that it is easy and fun to learn. Otherwise, I wouldn't be teaching it if it's not fun. Why? And it won't be fun to learn if it's not in a story format, because that's how we learn ideas and remember better when it's in a story format. So after the Mughal Empire was ending, at the end came the British Empire, okay, and took over power in India. When the Mughal Empire was in its glory, Mughal India is very rich country. When I say India, that includes modern day Bangladesh, modern day Pakistan and India, all of them together, one country, right? Huge. And it is very wealthy. In fact, much wealthier than all the European countries put together. Yes, definitely richer than British who came to India. 25% of the world's economy is India's. Yes. And such a powerful, wealthy country, how the British exploited India. And when they were leaving India, 1947, India got its independence, August 15, they completely made it into an impoverished nation and kept a population uneducated and was in a state of appalling nature. And how Indian founding fathers, when I talk about founding fathers, I'm talking about Mahatma Gandhi. You heard of him, world famous around the world. He has statues. We will be having a lecture on Mahatma Gandhi's ideas that shaped him, because that idea of Mahatma Gandhi influenced Martin Luther King in America as well, right? So we'll be talking about the founding fathers who shaped India. That will include Nehru, Patel, all these figures. Now these names, for those who have never heard of it, sound very unfamiliar. Do not worry, with stories you will be able to grasp them and you will know them, just like you know George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Madison, Monroe. All these are founding fathers of America, and including Alexander Hamilton. How do we know? Because of the stories. And these people come alive, and we will have stories and their ideas, how they got independence for India from the British, from the most powerful empire at the time, which was the British Empire. And it was the largest empire ever in mankind. But their prime jewel was India, because it was a wealthy country, and they exploited it and took all the wealth to England. And so we'll talk about that. And once India get its independence, how did India govern itself? Because India as a name itself, see, based on Indus Valley civilization, right? It's princely states. It's not a one monolithic country. There was many princely states ruling different parts of India. Now you have to bring them together as one whole country. How do you do that? That's a very hard task, because not everybody is going to give up power of their own to join together a whole country, because then they won't have power of external affairs, right? And the military or other things. So it's like asking America, Mexico, Canada, all in North America to join into a one country. Mexico wouldn't like to join America, because then they will lose their sovereignty, right? So how do you ask these princely states, hundreds of them, to give up power and consolidate into one country, India? And what were the problems then independent India faced, right? And we will talk about that. And then we will move on to lectures focusing on fascinating, in my opinion, foreign policy of India. Foreign policy of India is like the 21st century, modern foreign policy. India, how it deals with China. What are the problems India and China have? They have fought a war in 1962, and so what are the problems they have? And India has fought more than 4 wars with Pakistan. So, and why did they fight? And what is the foreign policy of India when it comes to dealing with Pakistan? For some of you, you might not even know what foreign policy is. Do not worry, I will start the lecture with making you understand that and how they go about achieving the national interest, quote unquote, national interest of India. Okay. And once we talk about that, we'll talk about India's foreign policy with the US, right? Why US? Even though they're far away. In US, the oldest democracy in the world, India is the largest democracy in the world. And so they are in the relationship is getting stronger and stronger in 21st century. So that aspect we will talk about. Then we will talk about the India's view, and now it's growing power. It's the 3rd largest economy. Can you believe it? Yes, such a poor country left by the British. The change happened after 1990s with the change in economic model, because India was very socialistic, and then they adopted free market economics. It started growing 7 to 8% an average a year for the past few decades, and that growth has brought out many millions of Indians out of poverty. Still, India has a lot of poverty. India is a paradox, a paradox, a paradox in sense it is a country with third largest economy adjusted for PPP, purchasing power parity. It's richer than Japan. It overtook Japan. So first two rich countries, US, China, and India the third. And despite that wealth, India has millions, hundreds of millions still in poverty, destitute state. And still the country has millions of people not able to have access to proper toilets. Public defecation is a problem in the country. So the richest man of India has the most expensive home in India, about $1 billion, Mukesh Ambani's home. If you Google, you'll see the home, Antila. And not far from the home, you could see the slums of Bombay. If you have watched the movie Slumdog Millionaire, you know what I'm talking about. Those are the slums of India. The poverty is juxtaposed. So that's a paradox of India. And India has great institutions, educational institutions, which create amazing engineers and scientists. In America, the stereotype Indian means, oh yes, they are good at computers and smart people. All this I've heard as an Indian. That is not always the case, because that's a stereotype of what they have seen in America, the Indians who come here. But if you see in India, there's about 72% of public school children drop out before 8th grade. That's millions, hundreds of millions of students drop out of high school before even going to high school. So they wallow in poverty, right? So there's this paradox I talked about, rich and poverty, and highly educated because of great educational institutions, subsidized education in many of the institutions we'll talk about, and also students who are not educated, and there's illiteracy. There's a illiteracy in India in large numbers, in droves. So that is the paradox of India. And we'll be talking about farmers, and the suicide rate is so high. And we'll be talking about India's modern day problems they face, and so the domestic situations. So it is a course that will get you understanding the largest democracy in the world from its origin to the modern context. Why study this course? One of the reasons is India is a rising power, and it will become and play a vital role. It is already asking for a permanent seat in the UN Security Council. There are only 5 big powers in the UN Security Council, right? And India is vying for a seat in there. So it is a large population with youth, because even China and India are the largest population, more than 1 billion people, as you know. But India is going to overtake China. And not only India is going to overtake and become the number 1 populated country in the world, India will also have more young people compared to China. China is an aging population. Most of the world, the developed nations are aging. That means there are more older people than young people. India, on the other hand, about 65% of the population are below 35 years of age, which is wonderful for India's growth, future growth, because they will be in their productive years and bring economics to the better level standards. So understanding it on the youth is also good for wars. Yes, you can't let a 70-year-old man go and fight wars. You ask a 20-year-old to go and fight wars for the country. So thus advantages of youth in education, and also we will understand politics, how the system, India's system of politics is different. We have like binary, Republican, Democrat, 2 big parties. India has it's a parliamentarian system, and we will study about the system of India, of how the parliament works, how India has a prime minister and a president. You're like, what? Yes. So parliamentary system like Israel, it has 2 of this, and how it works. India has a Supreme Court just like the United States, and how it works, and we will see all these details. Okay, so now I want to keep it this short because this lecture is just an introduction, and I'll put simultaneously a video for you to start watching, and you will be enjoying this class along with me. We'll have fun and learn a lot by end of the semester. Good luck.